Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kira and today's video was actually decided by my lovely Instagram followers and YouTube subscribers. There are two videos that I frequently get requested to film for my channel, which is how to create color combinations like Rita Berman and also how to color clouds in her coloring books. I wasn't sure which one to prioritize first, so I put up some polls on my social media accounts. And as you can see from the title of this video, the color combinations video won by a long shot. However, I promise I will be doing the cloud tutorial video at some point. I know I keep saying it, but I swear it will happen eventually. Hopefully, fingers crossed, next month. But anyway, enough excuses from me. Let's dive into how Rita Berman creates her beautiful color combinations. As many of you know, I am a massive fan of her illustration and coloring style. It's so unique and quirky and has always been a major inspiration for me and my coloring pages. When I first started coloring, I spent a lot of time trying to recreate her colored pages without having any idea how she did it or what colors she used. I'd just scrutinize her Instagram posts and do my best to replicate them. These days, I don't focus as much on recreating her work exactly, but instead take inspiration from it to develop my own style. So while I can't give you the exact formula on how Rita creates her color combinations, because that would require getting inside her brain, which I sadly cannot do. I wish I could, but I can't. I'll offer you the next best thing, which is how I've developed my own color combinations and coloring style thanks to Rita's completed pages. To explain my process as clearly as possible, I created somewhat of a cheat sheet on Canva that breaks down the most common color combinations that Rita uses for each major color of the rainbow. But before we jump into that, I'll begin by laying down a base for each element on the page with watercolor pencils, as I usually do. This helps me plan out where each color will go, especially since we're working with 7 different color combinations on this page. And I also find that starting with a watercolor base helps prevent muddy blends, as the dry pencil shading is less likely to mix with the activated watercolor layer underneath. It doesn't fully prevent it, but it just helps. Alright, now that we have the base layer done, let's dive into my Rita Berman cheat sheets. I spent a few hours analyzing her Instagram posts and picked out the most common color combinations that she uses for each major color. And today we're going to start off with red. This is my red combination cheat sheet with 6 examples of colors that Rita often pairs with predominantly red elements on her pages. As you can see, I've seen her commonly combine red with green, yellow, purple, pink, and orange, but rarely did I see her combine it with blue. And for this page today, I'm going to be using the combination from example number 1 to color the red elements on the page. This combination is made up of red, orange, and green. Now, I won't be coloring this entire page on camera, but I'll be coloring one of each repeated element so you can use the same color combination wherever the element reappears. When it comes to putting these color combinations into practice, I always use the color with the darkest hue as my shadow color, the one with the lightest hue to be my highlight color, and then any remaining colors as my midtones. So for this particular combination, red will be my shadow color, orange will be my midtone, and green will be my highlight. So you'll see me using my 160 set of BRUTFUNERS for this page. I did recently ask you guys about whether or not I should be using my BRUTFUNERS for color alongs and tutorials, just because every BRUTFUNER set has a different numbering system. So if you have the 180 set of BRUTFUNERS, then the numbers on your barrels are going to be very different to my 160 set. And there seemed to be a split opinion on this in the comments, but I did ultimately decide note that I would use them here and there for videos because I really do love these pencils, and I want to show you that you don't need an expensive set of pencils to create an awesome coloring page, and I also want to encourage you to use whatever you have on hand. Try to match the colors as best as you can, because if you can learn to recreate a color along without necessarily knowing the exact pencil colors that a colorist is using, I think you can just really improve your skills as a colorist a lot faster. As I've said before, I did this a lot at the beginning of my coloring journey, and I think it's one of the reasons why I've been able to progress and improve a lot faster than I ever could have anticipated. And don't get me wrong, I do love my new set of Prismacolors, but I have found that my BRUTFUNERS are actually a better option when creating color combinations like RITA BERMAN. I did a bit of research recently and discovered that the BRUTFUNER pencils are actually a formulation of wax and oil, or at least that's what it says online. This means that the pigments don't blend together as easily as wax-based pencils like Prismacolors do, and whilst this can be a negative in some circumstances, it's actually a positive here because these kinds of color combinations that I'm showing you today are less likely to get muddied with opposing colors. Like you can see here with the green and the orange. Typically when you mix these two colors together, you'll end up with a brown, and you definitely find that being the case if you're using a super soft wax-based pencil. However, because I'm using my BRUTFUNERS that have oil within their formulation, a slight brown does show up within the blend, but it's a lot more subtle. And you'll notice in Rita's work that she really does embrace these slight muddy blends in her combinations, and I personally really like it because it gives the page a lot more depth and realism. I also wanted to point out that for several elements on this page, you'll see me adding a tiny bit of extra depth with my 31 BRUTFUNER pencil. This is a dark purpley brown shade that I'm using to add more shadow and dimension to the illustration. So if you're trying to match that color with a different pencil set that you own, just try to find a pencil that's a purpley brown color within your set. Now let's talk about orange color combinations. Orange was the one color that I found the least examples of color combinations for, and even here you can see some of these examples probably lean more towards yellow, but for my cheat sheet, we're saying it's orange. And I found that blue and green were the two colors that I least commonly saw paired with predominantly orange color blends. For my page, I'm going to put the third example into practice with purple as my shadow color, red as my midtone, and orange as my highlight. Now, in retrospect, I probably should have worked my way from lightest to darkest for this color blend because the final product ended up being more purple and red rather than orange, and the combination did end up looking a lot darker than I anticipated as well. So to try and rectify this at the very end, what I'll do is add some highlights with acrylic marker, maybe in a light orange color, just to break up some of the darkness that I created with the purple and the red. Now, I know a lot of you are probably going to ask me how I know where to put my shadows and highlights, and to be completely honest, that's probably a topic that deserves its own dedicated video, but for the most part, I don't really have much of a formula when it comes to my shading. Unless if objects are overlapping one another or I'm trying to portray a particular light source, then I'm usually just shading however I'm feeling in that moment, whatever my intuition is telling me, which I know is not very helpful for you, but I'm someone who's not too concerned about being super accurate with my shadows and highlights because my coloring style just isn't very realistic. A tip that I have picked up though from analyzing Rita Berman's work is to not shade everything the exact same. And what I mean by this, and what you can see me do during this coloring tutorial, is that for an element like a flower for instance, I'm not going to shade every petal the exact same with, say, the darkest color in the middle and the lightest color at the tip. Sometimes I put the shadow on the right side, and then for the petal next to it, I'll put it on the left. And by doing this, you're just creating a page with a lot more interest. It'll feel more organic, less structured, and less perfect. Which is why I think I fell in love with coloring in the first place, because I'm such a perfectionist in my everyday life that when I come to sit down and color, it's like a breath of fresh air because there is no right and wrong. So just remember, and this is something I do need to remind myself as well, as long as you're just putting some color down on a piece of paper, then you are coloring correctly. For yellow, I didn't find any colors that Rita Berman didn't blend with it. Every color of the rainbow made an appearance with yellow, and I think that's because it's quite a versatile color in my opinion. And so today I'm using a pink, orange, and yellow combination inspired by example number 4, with pink as my shadow color, orange as my midtone, and yellow as my highlight. Now, I just want to point out that if you see me not color the center of any of the flowers in this tutorial, that means that I'm either going to color the center with acrylic marker or glitter gel pen. This isn't something that Rita Berman necessarily does. In fact, I see her more utilize either gold watercolor or gold foil paint for sparkle on her pages, which I do need to try sometime. But yes, glitter gel pen and acrylic marker are my go-to for those tinier areas where it's harder to get a nice color blend in. So instead of just doing a straight color, I add a little sparkle because it makes my inner child happy. Now you can see that I found quite a lot of green color combinations in Rita Berman's work. I have 9 examples here and some of them are quite similar, but because green is such a common color for a lot of colorists, I figured it was better to have more options than not enough. And the only color I didn't find paired with predominantly green color blends was purple. So the color combo I will be using today is number 4, since there are a few swirl-like elements like this one on the page that I'm coloring. And what I'll be doing is using 2 different greens as my shadow and midtone colors, have yellow as my highlight, and then just add a dash of red here and there for a bit of interest like we can see in the example. Now you'll see me reusing a majority of these pencils that I'm coloring with for several of the color combos on this page. And this is not because I'm lazy, well, at least not the entire reason. No, this is because this just helps the page be a lot more cohesive in the end. If you add too many shades of green or too many shades of blue, the page can start to look a little bit jumbled and confusing. I mean, there is no right and wrong to coloring, but that's just what I found. So when experimenting with multiple color combinations like I'm doing on this page, definitely utilize the same pencils throughout. And ordinarily, I probably wouldn't have 7 very intense color combinations on one page, but I'm just going a little bit extra in this circumstance so I can give you an example of every major color on the color wheel. Now it is time for my favorite color and my favorite color to create combinations with, which is blue. The only color that I didn't see too often with blue was the color red, and the combination that I've chosen to incorporate into today's page is example number 7. Purple will be my shadow color, blue is going to be my midtone, and green is going to be my highlight. Okay team, we're nearly at the end. We're at our second last color combination cheat sheet for this video, which is purple. And the only color that I never really found combined with purple was green. So today I'm going to be putting the 5th example to work, and I'm actually going to change up how I use the colors in this combination for different elements. So for the first flower I'm coloring, you'll see me use red as the shadow color, and then 2 different shades of purple for the midtone and highlight. And then for the second flower, I'm using various purples for the shadow and midtone colors, and then red is going to be added for just a little pop of interest. This is something that you will often see Rita Berman incorporate into her coloring pages, where she'll just add a random color somewhere just for fun. And I think it's these little unusual details like this that make her coloring style so phenomenal and unique. So I highly encourage you to go outside your comfort zone next time you're coloring a page and try adding just a tinge of color to something. Perhaps it's a tinge of orange to the tips of your leaves, or maybe some pink to your clouds. Have some fun and experiment. And we finally made it to our last color combination for the video, which is pink. Pink is another common color that Rita utilizes a lot in her work, and like yellow, I found examples of every color in the rainbow featured within at least one pink color combination. And today I'm going to be using example number 1 because this exact flower shape appears on the page that I'm currently working on, so I couldn't not use it. For this combination, pink will be our shadow color, orange will be our midtone, and yellow will be our highlight. You'll often find that once you start to get to know a particular artist's illustration style, you won't need to think as hard when it comes to coloring their pages. For example, I've been coloring in a lot of new books this month, and I've definitely found myself struggling to color a little bit more than usual, just because I'm not as familiar with these new artists' illustration styles. I mean, if you give me a Johanna Basford page, most of the time I'll be able to color it fairly easily because I've learned how to shade her leaves and flowers and certain repetitive elements on her pages just because I've colored her books so much. So just remember, if you're struggling to color in an illustrator's book that is new to you, don't give up. Remember that practice makes perfect. I mean, I know I said there's no such thing as perfect in coloring just before, but you know what I mean. And the more pages you color, the more comfortable you'll feel coloring that artist's work. And this is what the page looks like after I've done all of the coloring work. I still need to go in and add some acrylic marker detail to bring back some of the highlights, and of course some glitter gel pen as well. So make sure you're subscribed so you can see my September coloring pages video if you want to see how this page turns out, as well as my Instagram. But yeah, that's my process for creating color combinations like Rita Berman. I hope I explained everything clearly enough. I feel like I don't always succinctly articulate what's going on inside this brain of mine, so if you need me to clarify anything, leave a comment down below and I'll make sure I get back to you as quickly as possible. Happy coloring, friends. Have a good day, have a good life, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!